Hello, ladies and gentlemen, for the people that are on YouTube, we are doing a live YamatoCannon experience for the first time since its inception. Today we're having no guest. We're having no guest since the guest that I had planned couldn't do it this week, so we're going to push it forward for next week. This time around, we're going to just do a LEC tier list. We're going to rank all the teams and discuss their strengths and weaknesses. We're going to talk about Valorant. We're going to talk about Doublelift. We're going to talk about TSM Maokai. And then at the end, we're going to take some viewer calls and see how that works. Everyone needs to get on the Discord channel and if you want to get involved. But that should happen in about 1 hour or something. What about patch notes? Oh, patch notes they are not out yet. The patch notes are not out yet, and it feels silly to. Is this fan loud, guys? How loud is this fan that I just put on? Is it loud? It's quite loud, right? Let me lower it. So we're going to start off with the whole. We can hear it, but not annoying. I'll lower it one time. Okay. So the first thing that we should start off with, I think, is we keep it simple, because I need to warm myself up into this. I guess we start with the whole Valorant thing, which is the whole Valorant thing. I know that everyone's excited about the game, and a lot of people have been allowed to play it, and the overall sentiment is that the approach to creating the game seems to be very sound, right? They're trying to address the issues of Overwatch and CSGO in one go and just corner the market and take it over. But it's surprising that, like people are jumping on the ship right away, right? Jumping on the ship right away. I think it's crazy when you see I'm gonna be a Valorant pro player. Like when you see people having this in their bio already, it's I just assumed it's satire. I assumed it's satire. Anything in between it just seemed awfully strange. Like to proclaim already that you're a pro player, and to proclaim already that you're gonna cast it. I think it makes sense, sure, but I think a lot of the mistakes that esports have done are right there, I think there is a world where Valorant becomes super, super successful. Maybe I will even work with it in the future, It's exciting, I get it. But to jump ship already is kind of mad, And I think always with games you want to be the caster, you want to be the caster, and I think this is what people are kind of running for. If you are the pioneer of an esport, you become huge, right? It's like, think of the Fnatic guys back in season 1, right? With Expec and so forth, they shaped the next generations and will always be remembered, right? Same thing with a Björksen or a Reckless, right? It's being there from the genesis and being involved and being there from the get-go is a big deal, And the same thing with being a caster. Because a lot of the spaces, for example, League of Legends casting or CSGO casting, it's very hard to break the top end because these are the voices that people are used to. These are the voices that people are used to, and like if I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna become the best CS:GO caster in the world, that's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. So I think this is the image that people have in mind. And then for the game, I think there's a world where this becomes the best shooter ever, right? There is a world also where this becomes the next Overwatch. It's a wash up. But I think it seems the approach from Riot seems to be they're taking opinions from the right people, and the general consensus is the hype is there, everyone is excited about it. So I think it's going to be super cool. It's also the fact that I assume the game is going to be running on a free model, like basically you pay for skins or whatever. I hope so. I hope. The key thing for me in order to make a game successful is, I hope Riot pays big bucks for the right casters. Like if they can make some of the biggest CS:GO casters move to this game with money, that could be, that already is a huge step, and then, be reasonable about it. Don't pull an Overwatch where you pay a reasonable rate and then, you want to change things up and forget, the people that can actually bring success forward. But I don't know the whole story of what happened in the Overwatch League. Nevertheless, I think we are moving towards a time where creating an esports title can become more and more calculated than before. A lot of big games have made a lot of big mistakes. I think the tick rate and the having it free, that's so huge for the Asian market. I think really, really monetize yourself in the Asian market. Just fucking throw money to make sure that the game gains traction in the Asian market and bring in the big casters, man. And then fulfill all the promises in terms of making sure the game is as stable as possible, because this is a big issue in other shooters. But I'm excited about it. As a fan, I am really excited to play the game. Very excited to play the game. We'll have to pay attention, but I think I understand why people want to jump ship and proclaim that they are the guy for this game. But other than that, it's kind of silly to do it so soon. We don't know anything about the game yet. Anyway, my friend works at Riot. He told me later this month, Doc Shroud, ETC are flying out to Riot to playtest. Yeah, that's exciting to hear the opinions of these guys. They're bringing in people with a lot of big voices. And my understanding is that they are going to be allowed to share their opinion publicly. So that's going to be super cool and interesting. And I think that's a huge risk at their part, but at the same time, it is very honest. It's very honest, and I think that's cool. From looks, it seems a new Overwatch will never take CSGO place. I think, maybe it doesn't take CSGO's place, but it might take there is a world where it takes a lot of CSGO's market share. And if there's more money involved, then there is a world where, all of the organizations that have frustrations with the CSGO circuits and the tournament organizers, maybe this is an opportunity for Riot to seize it, And then a lot of the events already, like let's say league events, are crossovers with Valorant events and so forth. That could be super exciting, And to say it's just a new Overwatch is very unfair, because it's a balance in between. It's like everyone has the same guns. The skills are not that overwhelming. There is buy rounds, and there is the balance of it, and the speed of it is very similar to CS:GO. Okay, well, I think that's enough on Valorant. We will just have to pay attention to how it develops. I'm excited either way. Let's move on. Another thing now, I guess the next topic that I wanted to bring up is the whole double lift thing. There was a lot of discussion in regards to double lift, and who could really blame him, for not being motivated in spring. Spring split has been gutted for many reasons, and when it comes to double lift, it's easy to forget that he's one of the players with the longest careers out of any player that is still relevant. And for him to not have that passion, because the guy has money, he can stream, he's got a huge fan base, he's got titles. I imagine in a world where, we're winning the split. Let's just take Reckless as a comparison, right? So he's in Europe. His aspiration is to win the World Championship. This is something that he said over and over. This is where he finds his motivation and drive from. He's not hanging on to past trophies. He's moving on, and that's it. But at the same time, regionally, every split hasn't been easy, right? There's always this tight competition between G2 and Fnatic. Maybe not 2017. Maybe that was, 2018. Maybe it wasn't, because Fnatic was just too dominant, and G2 had the Yann Madrid roster, and the finals looked rather easy for Fnatic, honestly. But back to Doublelift point. I think it is understandable why you would not be as motivated in the past. And to count out Doublelift at this point in time is also a mistake, because time and time again, waves of new players have come and he has always conquered, So Doublelift definitely still is good enough, He is still the best North American player to have ever played, So I think it just comes down to timing and motivation. Tactical, playing in the LCS, he has a lot of reason to be super motivated. It's an opportunity for him to play for Team Liquid. It's exciting, He's doing super well. Had a Kalista game. There's the source of motivation is easy to find, And I think it makes a lot of sense to let him play, If Doublelift is not motivated, which is just speculation, right? Assumptions. I don't want to speak for Doublelift or say that this is for sure. It just makes more sense to play with the player that is way more motivated. And I don't think there is any negative connotation to this. To say that Doublelift is done is also crazy. He was benched because of sickness, though. That's true. That's true. But I think it sparks an interesting discussion, because Tactical seems to do good enough. He seems to be good, honestly. He needs a big challenge to motivate him, basically. Well, I guess the hope is that viewing C9 now in their current form, 12-0, that this is going to spark a motivation. What greater feeling to win the LCS split after C9 will go 18-0. That would be poetic. It is a massive disservice to C9 though, because right now C9 don't have competition. You can say whatever you want about FlyQuest, and they have some good parts about them. I think mostly Ignar is really, really good, honestly. I think Ignar is smurfing over there, man. It's his playing field. C9 True Valis is saying, I think C9 is criminally overrated. Who's How would you say that C9 is rated? Because that's always a confusing thing, when people say that a team is overrated, underrated. Is it the majority, the public opinion, analysts? What else? The mothers of players, whatever else. C9 doesn't really face opposition from other teams, don't get me wrong, they have insane players. Honestly, that's true, yeah. I am the opinion that it is hard to make an opinion about C9. I think I think every team in North America looks terrible in comparison to C9. So the gap between C9 and other teams is honestly insane. Because even yesterday, like when they played against Dignitas, Griggs' Elise performance made me want to vomit, honestly. It was terrible. He had many opportunities to pressure the Gragas and to invade, and C9 nonchalantly, they are just playing whatever way they want in the early game. Gragas was doing bottom crab, and Elise could dive Aatrox at minute 4. They had Ignite, Doran Shield, no potion, 60% HP Aatrox. Didn't happen. And then afterwards, Hooney bounced the wave, he had a freeze, and Greg based and went into bottom side. It was unbelievable to watch this. I understand now why people think Elise is like, I don't think Elise is that high tier any longer. But these are the type of games that make people think Elise is really, really shit. Aatrox was high on health though. No, it wasn't risky. It's not risky. You have Ignite and Aatrox is 60% HP and you're playing Elise. If you don't dive there, you can just move on. And then Hooney bounced the wave at minute 5 and onward. And it was a big joke. It was a big joke, honestly. And the first time Elise tried to do anything at all to impact the Aatrox Lucian matchup was at 11 minutes. I think, and I'm not joking, I think Greg should just play Shyvana jungle. Just play Shyvana jungle, clear jungle, do it very fast, and then, you're scaling, man. You kill jungle fast, play Karthus Shyvana, kill jungle fast, because this is what you were doing with Elise anyway. The fact that that Aatrox was allowed to push the wave in there at minute 6 was a tragedy, man. Was a tragedy in itself. And oh, hey Amaro, big fan from your YouTube. You're an inspiration to aspiring coaches everywhere. Thank you very much, Blue Rooster 2112. It's very nice of you. I appreciate it. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Yeah, like Elise. It's also like, I think what we are forgetting about Team Liquid is they didn't play with their jungler. Like regardless of Schönfire's performance, where individually he wasn't a problem. Individually he wasn't a problem. But it has a psychological impact on the rest of the team when you're not sitting next to the player that you were visualizing that you're going to play with for the entire offseason. The Broxa move to Team Liquid happened pretty early on. I don't think C9 smurfed the drafts. Because even yesterday, I think Dignitas had options. Like, for them to deal with Anivia is tricky with their composition. It's tricky. Gragas has to be a big smurf. But C9 were just better. They were just better. Like Aatrox ended up being only 30 CS behind against Elise Lucian. So that's already like a super big win. Second, Cassio solo killed Lucian in mid. And then in terms of securing Drakes and securing Heralds, C9 are just better than everyone. They understand the timings of the waves, the BF sword base on the cannon into rotate onto Drake and the Herald. It's just in general, macro wise, they are way more sound. They keep tempo super well, and they make good moves that Dignitas don't know how to punish. Like even when C9 traded the double mid turret for the Infernal Drake, this is just smart play. You like the Anivia into cast matchup? I don't like the matchup per se. It's more about later on it becomes more tricky to play for Cassio, right? It's not in reference to the matchup. It's just that later on in the game, if I'm playing Anivia and the enemy carries are very immobile, I'm very happy, right? Anivia has a weak lane phase. She just does. And it is indeed a skill check. I agree with you. But I would even favor Cassio in the matchup. But then later, when Anivia starts to reach Road of Ages and Archangel, then the lane interaction becomes mute. Meaning that you pretty much the interaction in lane is non-existent because you just one-shot the wave if you want to and if you have the mana to do so with the Nivea. I think the way to beat C9 is having perma-prior top and draft for 2v2 bots. So now, if C9 allow you to do this, they've made a mistake, right? Because what you're asking for is to have, I need winning top, winning bottom against C9. And the issue right now is Licorice, Vulcan, and Sven are super far ahead of their competition. Meaning, individually, they are so much better. Sven and Vulcan have the biggest gap out of any lane. Like, they are so much better than any other bot lane in the LCS, and they are playing super well. Super well. And I think in a meta that is so dominant, if you have a good bot lane, it is fantastic, honestly. It's fantastic. Because not only are they very good at laning, but they're also very good at knowing where to be, you know? If you look at C9's games, the patterns that they are playing by and the timings they're playing by, always the same. And they can always achieve the same because they always have better players. In every game they're playing in LCS. And I don't think it's necessarily C9 Draft Kingdom. I don't think so. I think their draft has some flaws and holes, but they are just individually better, team-wise also playing better. The biggest question is C9, how will they look when they face real resistance, you know? And they could conquer that too, but they could also fall flat, you know? And it's tricky. It's really tricky. Like, imagine how freaking fun it would be to see C9 versus like Fnatic right now. I think Team Liquid will be a challenger coming into playoffs for sure. Team Liquid had a very rough off-season in the sense that they didn't practice, and also first half of the split is also really rough. C9 versus Fnatic, but I just I would favor Fnatic in that. Can you come coach TSM, please? We will see what the future holds. I look at that TSM roster and I think it has a lot of potential. And I think historically I managed to get a lot out of my mid laners. Like I think game philosophy wise, I really get a lot out of my mid laners because, and also honestly a lot out of my junglers too. I'm really mid 2v2 focused because I think if you dominate the mid 2v2, most of the time you dominate the map. And if you look at the, I just look at TSM's roster and I think it just has so much potential, so much potential that they have a decent player in every position, and they're getting leads. First 5 minutes of the game, TSM seemed to be really good, but then afterwards, they don't know how to manage waves. They don't know how to transfer pressure. They don't know how to play on side. Dalek has been good, like sure, but I wouldn't even go so far to say that he's been good. You know, because I think first 5 minutes of the game he finds a lot of good stuff, but then afterwards it looks kind of lost. But it's hard to blame Dardock for that because it's a team issue. It's a team wide issue. Fucking OBS doesn't let me center it. EG is also a very interesting pickle. I think the issue with EG, honestly, is that they don't understand their players. I don't think they understand their own players. And I think they're trying to box them in and shape them by the way they want to play, you know? Let's focus on LCS, guys, and then we move on to the LEC. I just think the EG roster, the EG roster is not allowed to show any expression of their own desires. Their players are not allowed to express themselves at all, and they're being put into boxes. And you're never gonna win like this. Usually, the jungler on the best team is going to look the best. I can tell you that much. I think. But yeah, EG also have a roster that belongs in the top. So Janko's overrated? No. He's not. Thank you very much, Derkan, for 3 months. Make some mother flipping noise. Which games do you plan to do review today? We will do like a Fnatic Misfits, or actually, yeah, maybe like a Fnatic Misfits, and then maybe OG and Rogue, and then maybe TSM versus Immortals, or something like this. Why is Team Liquid so trash and importing washed up junglers like Broxa? I think that's hilarious. Do C9 versus Dig review? We can do that too. Why didn't Kikis re-sign with Vitality after a successful 2018 split and you guys making it a Worlds? Well, if you take a look at the World Championship, his performance was very bad. And he didn't align with how I saw the team growing. Meaning, Mowgli was the perfect fit, but the issue was that I didn't think about what Mowgli had in Africa, and I didn't replicate that in order to, of course, continue his growth. He needed a sub, and this was my key mistake when it came to Mowgli. It was because Mowgli was one of the best acquisitions I could have made. He speaks very good English, learned. I like the idea of acquiring only one Korean. Mowgli is right now dual queuing with the Shy on a daily basis. Best coach in LEC so far? I don't know. It's like when it comes to Mowgli and junglers that always worked on Vitality, sometimes I try to push them into becoming players. Like, basically the way I see the jungle is that you should conquer everything if you can, you know? So the way the jungle level that I pushed for was absolute perfection. The thing is, with the team that Vitality had, I had players that struggled to play weak side with the exception of Kabashat. Struggled to play weak side. So the solution was to always draft in a way where Mowgli can fight enemy jungler. If we play in a way where we fight enemy jungler and we keep track of enemy jungler, there is no weak side. There's only strong side. Right? And this for some teams doesn't work. You have to solve your problems differently. Either you attack it through learning, or sometimes things just don't click for players. Right? But to circle around when it comes to of course, to circle around to what I brought up, like you asked about Kiki's thing is, he just. I think my main issue was that he didn't play for the team. He played for himself. He played for the perception, the public perception of himself. And this rubbed me the wrong way. And eventually, some team arguments that happened, it wasn't about reaching the right conclusion. It was more about it just became tribal. It was very tribal. It was no longer about reaching the right conclusion with Kikis. It was about just being right. And there were some fundamental differences in the way we wanted to think about the game, and it is what it is. Okay. Any other team that's interesting? Someone asked about Immortals. Honestly, I think it's sometimes when you're in a zoo and there is like one monkey that's like really smart and he can like calculate and shit. He can like, oh, this monkey can do Sign language. That's how I would describe Immortals. But of course, without the negative connotation. I think Soaz is having a field day. You know, whenever I see Immortals making a smart decision, I'm like Soaz. You know, Soaz. Xmeti hard carrying that team. How can you say that, man? I am really, really not. I'm really not a part of this narrative that Xmeti has an aura that makes everyone better. You know, I think Soaz is 1v9 for Immortals. I think Soaz is 1v9. Really 1v9. Like when I was on Summoning Insight with Thorin and Soaz. Soaz was like, and it is so bad, I can't believe it. And I spoke with Yuzuki too. He's like, NA is so unbelievably bad, I can't believe it. And these are players that are playing. It's just, I think Soaz is 1v9 for Immortals. And that's my opinion of Immortals. I don't think Broken Blade is bad. Why would he leave EU then? The thing is, Soaz would have probably stayed if he had like an offer that was interesting to him in Europe. It's just that everyone's talking about how European players are leaving to North America, but like look at the top four teams. Yeah. When at the beginning of the split, look at the top four teams. If you can't be in the top four team, well, what are you doing? What are you doing here in Europe? What difference does it make? You might as well bounce on some heads with Camille in North America. Soaz came from a rough split, very rough split, a rough year in Misfits, right? And the market value dropped, you know? And I feel for him. You can't blame him for going into North America. I'm certain that this was the best decision for him. It's not all about the money, man. It's like we are reaching the point where people recognize that it's not worth it to sacrifice your happiness for money, because you have to uproot and change your life completely. And if you're doing only that for money, you're going to fall into depression. And I think there's been cases in North America when that has happened too. What if Riot started an East Coast league? There's too little players. Honestly, if Soaz was an EG, wow. That's a team right there, man. Soaz on EG. Soaz on EG, man. Just imagine that, guys. Soaz on EG. Soaz, Jizuke, Bang, Zazel, and frickin' Svenskeren. That's a team right there, man. That would be cool. I would enjoy that a lot. Yeah, I also think it's EG is just identity crisis. Identity crisis. You know what's hilarious? That I just feel the need to bring up. Oh yeah, I guess Soaz on EG doesn't work because of the thing. I don't like Zazel. His laning is not that good. To be fair, how can we judge Zazel laning? How can we judge Zazel laning when he played with Sneaky and now bang? I don't know. Will Soaz leave his fellow Frenchman though? I don't think he gives a shit. Would you think of getting back into coaching? Yeah, it's in my consideration constantly. Would you say performing on a top tier team in LCS and bottom tier in LEC is the same in terms of team scouting? No. It's everything is on an individual basis. If you look at results, then you would never sneaky laning better than Zazal laning. No, doubt. It's just I wanted to bring it up. God bless Sneaky. But look at C9 now. Look at C9 now. it's just funny, right? It's funny. It's always funny to look at things like that. Obviously it's not the whole story. Obviously it's not the whole story, right? But it is funny to look at things like that. For example, now, like imagine Jizuke looking at Vitality, That's hilarious for him. Hilarious, right? They get rid of us and now they are 111. It's hilarious, right? But it's not the entire story. Zen played one game of Ezreal so far for C9. Vulcan is a beast, man. Vulcan is a beast. That's NA talent right there, man. Philippe Laflamme. I hope he gets MVP of the split, man. He deserves it so fucking badly. Really, MVP of the split. Vulcan. Very good. Very, very good. Vitality 2018. Yeah. Thing is, 2020, there was many lessons in 2019. Many lessons for both Vitality and for me and for us and how we ran the team. And we managed to do so much in 2019. And then 2020, they just cut us off at the legs, and it's disappointing, I gave my life, my blood, and my sweat and tears to this project, and I had a contract for another year, but it is what it is, right? You make choices. You make choices, and you move on. I have no hard feelings at all, I have love for the memories and for Vitality. It's that is all. How do you feel when your speech is used in an LEC video? It feels nice, honestly. I think we covered most of the interesting topics in the LCS. Do you think TSM should play more around Kobe? I don't think the issue is who they play around. I just don't think they know how to play around anything. That's the issue. They know how to get a lead first 5 minutes, and then afterwards they don't know how to manage waves. They don't know how to coordinate anything. It should be like this. Okay, I'm freezing the mid wave. Let's come and pressure. Okay, now we can build a wave. Let's look to pressure dive, and then maybe we can make the jungle show up. Okay, enemy jungle shows up. What do? Okay, move into bottom side. We give our bottom prior. We step here. We use our green wards because we play around. Our mid lane, right? And with this in mind, you you begin to make a plan, right? And then, okay, we are transferring our pressure into bottom side. We're contesting enemy bot side jungle. We're pushing the enemy jungler out of here. Then afterwards, you look to pressure dive on bottom, right? Is Koba a shot caller? No. What do you think about LS and grabs? Oh, what's this?
No, it doesn't mean that he should be able to find a flank. What is the ward setups? Who are the other champions in the game? What are the other champions doing when Atrox just disappears into the fog of war? Shut the fuck up! Holy shit! You don't play the game, you don't talk about the game, all the information that you have comes from your players. Like, holy fucking shit. Nemesis, are you here or what? I don't know, I'm
That means he should be on the plan.
What on earth, man? Is this how he reacts to... I just... He's making a lot of assumptions here about what Grabs is saying. Even the GP Aatrox matchup, like, to say GP always wins is not true. It's not true. GP wins hard from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 even, and then afterwards when Aatrox has 3 points in Q, and if Aatrox is even at level 7, then this matchup shifts pretty hard back, you know? So and also in the context of what Grabs is saying, he has Aatrox into GP. He is referring to a very specific game. Because... No, in the context of theory, you have to speak in the sense that everyone plays perfect. That I am in alignment of. It's like if we are theorizing about a play, it needs to work in a world where everyone plays perfect. If the enemy responds perfect, and so forth. In theory, you can't contextualize or calculate with human error. Even though it's there, you strive for perfection, you talk about perfection, but you understand you can't achieve it, right? So the bottom line is still, I have a hard time accepting any matchup as 100% favored to one side always. Well, some matchups are. GP Aatrox isn't. GP Aatrox isn't. That's why it's such a weird kind of blade to die on, because GP needs to build a big CS lead from 1 to 5. If Aatrox has first base Ninja Tabi into your Shin, you will not win. You will just not win. And that's a fact. And with this in mind, this matchup is Grabs was basically saying he disagrees with Ella's opinion of always taking scaling team comps, that Grabs will take the less scaling draft on the end of the game before they scale or play around team fights, not taking them or flanking. I don't think that's the point of either one of them. Thing is, the context of scaling is always relevant. It always relies on what the rest of the game is. There are some games where even Kassadin doesn't scale good. If you're playing Kassadin against Maokai, Camille, Lucian, Braum, your champion is just not good. Like if enemy is Sejuani, Maokai, Camille, Lucian, Braum, Kassadin, you can be level 18 and you don't scale good, right? You're going to have a hard time against this. And Azir would be better against this, right? Because you deal with tanks better, you have a longer range. But then there are some cases where Azir scales worse, and Kassadin could be a lot better. For example, if enemy team is Zoe Ezreal, then Azir doesn't scale as good because they outrange him, right? So, scaling is always in the context of what's going on in the game. Even with GP and Aatrox, even though GP in a lot of cases in the current meta, the ultimate is super, super powerful. I just think, just give it 1 second, guys. Let me explain scaling. Scaling doesn't mean, okay, we're going to take it in the ass for 15 minutes and then be good. Scaling is opportunity. Scaling is opportunity, right? That comes later down the line. But you can have a good early game comp that also scales good, right? You can have one champion. You can have one champion that makes you scale good. That could be enough. Let's say you have one champion that deals with the enemy champions well, right? One champion. All it needs is one champion. You can have one champion to outscale the whole enemy team. You know? One champion can outscale the whole enemy team. Sometimes you play a champion and you realize that the enemy team can't deal with you. For example, let's say you play an Ezreal and the enemy team have no way of catching on to you or killing you, right? The whole team composition doesn't need to scale, right? It's just that, for example, if I 5th pick a champion, like in the context of, a good example is Rogue versus Fnatic, right? They 5th pick Zac. 5th pick Zac was a good counter pick into the enemy composition. It's not good against Kled, but it's good into Xayah, Syndra, because at that point in the game, they don't kill tanks that well, right? So that's a way to approach it. Scaling is not, oh, we are scaling for late game. We don't do anything early game, we scale for late game. No, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. So Veigar is another interesting one, because people were very happy with Fnatic picking Veigar. When Veigar was picked into G2, I thought it was a horrible pick. Yeah, Zac is definitely not picked for lane because you lose against Kled. You can rewatch this game and you can see Kled had many opportunities. Ornn is a good scaling champ, but is a good early game champ too. You need to keep in mind that scaling is just one characteristic. One characteristic. If champion only has scaling, it is useless most of the time. Veigar was very bad into G2's composition. Why? Because G2 didn't have an intention to run at Fnatic ever. They are in a position where the enemy needs to force on them because they win split on both sides. Ryze was a phenomenal pick. So Ryze is a very, very good pick when enemy shows GP. Because only in that case, you scale good with Ryze. So Ryze, how does he scale good? He needs to have an absurd amount of gold. And the way he gets that absurd amount of gold, that you win split and you take enemy jungle camps, Gromp, and you take your own golems. This is how Ryze needs to function in a game. But if the enemy has Aatrox, Aatrox is going to win split against Ryze. Then it's going to be worse for you. If Ryze loses split, he doesn't serve that much of a function. He doesn't serve that much of a function. So there are contexts where Ryze scales good, and there are contexts where he scales bad. It's always in contrast of what is going on in the rest of the game. And I don't want to get too much into with this clip that you sent me from LS or whatever. That's why I disagree with LS. But I think, but guys, scaling is just one characteristic of the composition. If a composition, the only strength it has that it's scaling, then most of the time you will lose. It needs to have more characteristics than just scaling, because there is more to it than that. There's more to it than that. And I don't think LS is talking pick scaling and you'll win the game. I really don't think this is what he's trying to say. Scaling is just one characteristic. Like if you pick Kog'Maw, Azir, Lulu, Ornn, and I have Pantheon, Elise, Kalista, Thresh, like the odds are I can win, you know? Like if you have Nasus, Kog'Maw, Lulu, like I can win through the sheer force of just getting a massive advantage, you know, and then securing Elder Dragon at 25 minutes, you know, or Soul, I mean. Do you think Lee Sin and Elise are bad? No. I think Lee Sin scales good. I am of the opinion that Lee Sin scales good. Because when a champion, like, if you play against a good Lee Sin, the presence he has in a team fight is insane. If you play against a good Lee Sin player at the highest level, Lee covers a lot of fucking space. If I'm playing Syndra, AD carry, whatever, you have to put this in your mind. You have to put this in your mind. I don't think you guys should misconstrue Ellis's opinion. Because I doubt his opinion is just pick scaling and you'll win. It's much more nuanced than that. I wouldn't agree that Lee Sin scales good, but his playmaking potential is what... So what would you say his playmaking potential is? So tell me, why does a support scale good? A support scales, for example, Nautilus ult, it scales good, right? Because it's always impactful in the game. Itemizing towards it is difficult. Sure, there's Age of the Night and Banshee, or Zonia, but Nautilus Ultimate is a powerful spell that scales in the game. Lee Sin scales as well. Playmaking potential scales good. Pressure on the enemy scales good. Lee Sin can solo win the game at any point in the game. Of course, the relevance is, like, you need to be so fucking good at Lee. And there are very few players that are good enough to be that player on Lee Sin. Because, of course, being good at Lee Sin is not being Gripex in solo queue and kicking random kids in the head. It's kicking the best players in the world, you know? You're outplaying the best players in the world. Scaling doesn't only come down to statistics. That's what I tried to make clear earlier, where Kassadin, maybe number-wise, is the highest and best scaling champion in the game, but he struggles, right, into some specific champions. Why does Braum scale so good? Because no matter what, his shield is going to deflect damage from your carries. The same way Lee Sin will pressure the enemy carries into doing less damage, right? So that's the thing. Scaling is not only statistics. It's not only numbers. I hit you harder is not the only thing that is scaling. Otherwise, Darius with full crit build would be the best scaling champion in the game, right? Or like Rengar with crit, or Master Yi. So it's not only about the numbers, it's not only about the statistics, it's all about what's going on in the game. And Lee Sin, the presence he has in the team fight makes him scale good. And then about the second topic, Elise, Braum's abilities all serve the same purpose from 5 minutes in to 40 minutes in. But he scales because the impact of his abilities is always in context of what is happening from the other side, right? The champion's kit can inherently scale good. Doesn't have to come down to statistics. CC scales good, right, most of the time. Good engage ability, scale good, right? Elise. It's an interesting one because Elise, let's say you have Elise, right? And then your top matchup is, let's say your top matchup is Camille Renekton. And you use Elise to put Camille ahead. And Camille begins to win split against Renekton. Camille is going to carry the game, and it doesn't matter how bad Elise is later on. This is a case where you can justify the Elise pick. Sometimes, maybe you could accomplish the same with Karthus. Sometimes. But there are some times where you can't. A good example is the Dignitas versus C9 game. So, lucky for C9. Well, not lucky, probably they would win the game anyway, but Grieg didn't know what to do with Elise. Gold begets gold. That's what people sometimes forget. If I get a 500 gold lead at minute 3, and let's say this involves, let's say the enemy top laner backs off at the right time of the dive. We pressure Gragas out of his own jungle, enemy Gragas, and they back off and they fall 20 CS behind, and they don't get the kills. This is also wonderful. This is also great. Elise has served his purpose. He's ahead. But it's once again the same, right? It's also the same. Elise needs to have a purpose in terms of bridging the gap for a different champion. Gold begets gold. And right now, in the current top lane meta, Elise has less of a place, especially because AD mid laners are not so prevalent. So, with this being said, Elise, I agree that she's lower on the prior right now, but Elise can be used to snowball lanes that will carry for you. In late game, right? There are many champions that are useless. Usually, what defines your composition later on is one or two champions. One or two champions can carry. You know? That's the thing. The whole composition doesn't need to scale. Doesn't need to outscale. All it takes is one champion to outscale. Yeah, Elise doesn't scale good. Let's not try to... Elise doesn't scale good. Elise obviously doesn't scale good. Almost every jungle scales better than Elise. But Elise can be used to get an advantage early on. If a team picks Elise and doesn't execute dives, the champion mostly loses. Sure. But sometimes, if you pick Elise, and Elise gives you free early game because the enemy is too afraid to do anything, and then all of a sudden you have champs that are so strong at level 6 to compensate for Elise's weakness. That can be used in a way too, right? Let's say you use Elise. Let's say you have Braum and... let me think of a lane that's strong. Let's say you have Braum, Varus, Elise. Okay? You have Braum, Varus, Elise, your bot side. An enemy is Elise, like let's say Zyra, Caitlyn. And then you use Elise to get your Varus Braum into a point where they're even. And then at 6, they're going to be able to one-shot. It was a crazy example. I don't even know the matchup too well. Caitlyn, Zyra versus Varus Braum. Sounds nasty. Sure, enemy can jungle, and enemy jungle can match, and maybe you'll be in trouble. But the point is, there are some scenarios where Elise is really, really good. It doesn't, and I'm talking in the context of, I'm not talking in the context of enemy inting and Elise getting kills. Even in perfect play, you can get leads with Elise. That's the thing. That's what people sometimes miss. In perfect play, Elise can get leads. In imperfect play, she can get even bigger leads, or she can have bigger ints, right? But there are a lot of scenarios where Elise can be picked, and you can get a 15 CS lead, and If that's not enough for you to snowball, then it was just a shit pick. And I think in the current meta, there is too little justification for Elise. Too little champions that synergize well with Elise. Kiana is not being played. Jace is not being played. As long as these champions are not being played, it's hard to justify Elise. But Elise does have a time and a place. And this is my main point about Elise. A good example was first game Griffin. Griffin versus G2. G2 had Ornn Elise. Elise secured Ornn early game. To be fair, like enemy had Renekton Talia. This was this game. They fucked Talia over, to be fair. But Elise secured Ornn early game. And then afterwards, Ornn carried for Elise. Nice. Okay. But yeah, I don't want to jump into this LS shenanigans, man. I don't want to fucking wake up one day and then there's some comment about me, and I'm not in the mood to be in some kind of war, because like even in this video that you sent me, it's just things being taken out of context, and then some little bird in the chat is gonna tell me what LS says about something, and then it's gonna be misconstrued, and it's pointless. It's just everyone's like their messenger, like a messenger that makes their own assumptions and so forth. So I don't like it too much. He was talking about flanks as well. Are you going to continue coaching? Yes. Let's move on to LEC tier list. So let's make an LEC tier list about the best teams. Like, how do we rate the teams in Europe? Leaguepedia, I'm gonna pull up Leaguepedia to make sure that I don't say something too silly. EU. So first place for me is still G2. G2 is still first place for me. To some that might be confusing, sure. I think G2 are, in the earlier weeks of the LEC, every week was all about Draft Kingdom. People realized very late that Ornn is very strong. I realized very late that Ornn is so strong in mid. Now I feel like the draft has finally settled down. It's relaxing. It's taking it easy. It is simple. It is calm. Right now, draft is pretty set in stone, and there is no craziness. There is no shenanigans for us to, be in a world where, like, Draft Kingdom. It's rare now. G2 have some issues with the Caps bot lane, but I think they've reserved playing APs for as long as possible in the bot lane. You never know, 10.4 is coming. 10.4 has already been here. So of course the meta might still shift, but it's not going to shift as heavily as it did in previous weeks, because it wasn't shifts that happened based over the fact that there was patch notes. It was more shifts that happened based over the fact that people realized what is good. For example, with the Senna on bottom, and Aphelios and Ornn, these weren't necessarily based off of patch changes. This was more about the fact that people figured out what to play. 10.4 was indeed live last week. So when it comes to G2, sure, Caps have struggled a little bit, but I think G2 are keeping a lot of aces up their sleeve. They can also switch back at any point in time, and I think still they are the most intelligent team that is playing in the mid to late game. In a lot of the games that they lost, they managed to make it very difficult for the enemy team, even though they got outdrafted and they made something very, very terrible at an early point in the game. And G2 are trying to address their weaknesses, which has been their early game, and I think Jankos is in insane form. So I think as long as this is the case, G2 is going to reign supreme. I think macro-wise they are the best. And I think it just comes down to them figuring out what they want to play draft-wise, and I think they're going to be golden again. So still G2 first place. Perks has been doing fantastic mid. Perks is the best mid laner in Europe performance-wise right now. There is no question about it. Caps for sure as well. G2 plays fantastic side lanes, hands down. I think Wunder has been kind of an issue. I think he dies a bit too much in side lane. This is something that happened at Worlds, and it's also happening right now. Against Mad Lions, I think he died like 3 times to feed the LeBlanc. So I think Wunder definitely needs to tone it down a little bit. You know? The armor of G2 fake pressuring the shit out of you is kind of gone, you know? So I think Wunder definitely needs to step up a bit. So that's G2. Second place, Fnatic. I think Fnatic showed something important this weekend. They showed that they are better than the teams below them, even with the worst draft. So Fnatic, the biggest difference between this Fnatic and last year's Fnatic is they seem a lot happier. Mithy seems to be a fantastic fit. They seem to have freedom in expressing what they want to play, what they want to do in the game. So I think that's super cool. I think Bwipo and Hilisang are the type of players that need full trust. When they have trust, they can really, really begin to dominate. I think Hilisang got a lot of undeserved shit because he had some Nautilus games that had like shitty scorelines. I think people should judge him based off of his overall play, and Hilisang is still in the talkings of the best support in Europe, you know. And Fnatic is no longer this one-dimensional team that will always lean on the crutch of playing through bottom side. Now they can do so much more. They can play through top. You guys all remember the game where we were solo killing Gimgoon and the jungler is not playing for him. Because I felt like Fnatic was boxed in, right? The previous Fnatic roster was really, really boxed into this idea of what they wanted to do, and I never think it was because of reckless, you know? It just wasn't. And I think still Fnatic bot lane are so freaking good. I think Fnatic bot lane is so freaking insanely good. I think they can play all the most important champs. Their wave management is so good. It's so difficult to find timings to gank Fnatic's bot lane, and it's really like the benchmark, you know, for how you're supposed to play. It is. The one issue with Fnatic is Bwipo's champ pool. He's the biggest out of any top player right now. So I don't know what you're smoking, man. I think he played the same champ only twice. Yeah, Fnatic bot lane, honestly, if you want to learn how to play bot lane, because this is what I do, is to just freaking look at the pro view of Fnatic bot lane. It's honestly so impressive. The main issue I have with Fnatic is I think it seems as they struggle to find victories when their compositions aren't revolving around engaging. And when their composition is not revolving around engaging. And I think this is something that they need to address. I think this weekend they won some games with Tamkench, 2 times even, and that looked fine. That looked good. So with that being said, that's cool, you know. That's cool. Like if Fnatic are drafting dive comps, they look very good, you know. They know how to just fucking go. Oh, Zoro no Kenshi. Thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate it. Much love. So, once again, to summarize Fnatic, very diverse in their play. They can play through mid, through top, through bot. They spread pressure very well. One of the best TP usages in the whole league. I think G2 is S+, Fnatic is S. The main worry for me, Nemesis, is always champion pool. Like, he didn't really... Like, he didn't play LeBlanc, for example, when he has a decent player on his team. And he doesn't play Zoe. You know, a lot of the good blind picks he doesn't play. And I think Nemesis is a bit predictable in draft. Nemesis can play assassins. I think his Akali performances last year were not that great. Caps struggled in lane, but it seemed like Caps was almost like choking. I don't know if it's the right word, but even when he played Rise, when he played Rise against when he played Rise against Mad Lions, it looked quite sad. No, Caps just played bad. There's no reason to defend Caps. Caps played very, very bad. So I'm slightly worried about Nemesis champion pool. What I want to see Fnatic do again is I want to see the split push Fnatic. I want to see the split push Fnatic. That is the final piece. I think if they bring back split push Fnatic and they realize they can win the game in other ways than just forcing face first, I become really, really excited. There was a time last year when Nemesis was playing TF and Corki and playing very, very well on side, and I think this is what they should look to go for again, especially since they're drafting more and more Tankench. And maybe 10.5 with TF buffs is going to bring that back. But still, Fnatic mid to late game is on par with G2, so that's exciting. So in general, I think the fact that we have two great teams is great. I think the recent form of Fnatic looks slightly better, but G2 were very dominant last weekend too. If I had to put money somewhere, I just think G2 would do better. I think they crack less under that pressure that G2 likes to put on. Always when we see G2 Fnatic play against each other in best of one, it can be all over the place, you know? What do you think of Akali right now? I feel like the ult cooldown is nice, but I feel like you're so freaking useless without ult now because of the Q cost. Now continuing to the third team. Third team is Origin. I think Origin is A+. And also the third best team in the league. I think Origin have strong players. They showcased last weekend that it's weird because last weekend I think that Misfits, Rogue, Mad Lions showed like their true colors. And with that in mind, I think OG look better. Not Misfits, no. Honestly, I think Misfits. We will get to Misfits. Let's focus on OG. So, Origin had a game where they played against Rogue and they stomped the shit out of them while playing Renekton, Leona, and something else. I can't remember whatever they had. They stomped the shit out of Rogue. I think OG will always struggle against Fnatic and G2, but I think against every other team, I would bet for them. The Tristana game was the first game. There was another game. I think just looking at the game's Origin playing against Rogue or Mad Lions, they make the enemy look quite bad. And then they take their time. The weakness is that they take their time. They've had some games where they gave away way too much in the mid game, and this is something they need to work on. I am in the position now that it's hard for me to imagine Origin beating G2 and Fnatic ever, honestly. That's where I'm at right now. But for anyone that has doubt of OG, just look at them against like people say OG is shit, but guys, they are 9-3. They are 9-3. They are 9-3. They have the same scoreline as G2 and Fnatic. They have the same scoreline as G2 and Fnatic. I would bet for OG against any teams below them, and then bet against them against G2 and Fnatic. G2 and Fnatic have too high of a pace in the mid to late game for them to keep up. And to say that OG is some kind of late game team is very very wrong, because many games in the early game, when they have the opportunities to do so, they dominate. A good game to look at is Mad Lions versus OG. Mad Lions versus OG was a great game where they completely shat on Mad Lions, and Mad Lions is getting really hyped. OG versus Rogue, both games, complete destruction from minute 3. 2 times. Destruction. Complete destruction. Annihilation. They have weaknesses, for sure. I'm not so sold on Destiny. Xerxes, people are talking about this champion pool, but I think while they're doing really well with Gragas and Karthus, I think Xerxes can play so much more. And I think what it comes down to is, the games that OG lost. So they lost one game against Fnatic. They put Alphari on Soraka. And they gave enemy Ornn Aphelios. Big mistake against Fnatic. Draft was lost. Draft was lost very fast. Then there was the Misfits game that they lost. They lost against Misfits. They tried to go for some early composition with Elise Camille, also looked terrible. Currently in the league, there's only 2 players that should be allowed to play Rek'Sai. And that is... You guys wanna guess? You guys want to guess who can play Rek'Sai? Who gets Rek'Sai permission? Yankos and Selfmade. Oh! Carlton M, you get the point. You get the point because you were first. And why can they play Rek'Sai? Because Fnatic and G2 play at a whole different pace than the other teams. Inspire? No. We did it. So when it comes to Origin, looking at their losses, poor drafts, poor jungle pick choices. I am not ready to put Xerxes in a box where he can only play Gragas and Karthus. It just happened to be the games where he played different junglers just looked terrible in general. I know because, sure, it's easy to find the correlation there, but he lost 2 games on Rek'Sai and 1 on Elise. 2 games on Rek'Sai and 1 on Elise. In situations where they just weren't good picks. To say that Xerxes has a small champion pool is it's counterintuitive here. Counterintuitive. The issue, the only underlying issue is for him, which is an issue for a lot of junglers, is that his Lee Sin level is not quite there. But to be honest, there's only 3 players that have the Lee Sin level that is there. And then everyone else is a pretender. Let's play this game again. Who are the 3 Lee Sin players of the league? Who are the 3 players? Oh, Sol was very quick. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Everyone knows. Everyone else that is playing Lee Sin in the league, pretenders. Don't let them. No. Don't let them. How are we leaving inspired out of this discussion? His Lee Sin is not good. You do not feel his Lee Sin in the game. So back to OG. I think their mid-game suffers a lot. And I think that's the underlying difference between them and Fnatic G2. They have good drafting. I think they have good understanding of early game because they've showcased a lot of strong early games against teams that people are very hyped on. Very, very hyped on. And I'm excited about OG's growth. But I don't think they will catch up. They will not catch up. I don't think they will catch up to G2 and Fnatic. Did I say OG is A+? I put them on A only. I think their 2v2 is crazy overrated though. So I think the issue with OG bot lane is they don't seem to know how to manage waves that well. I don't know what to think about. I don't know how to think about what's his name? Razork Lee Sin? Does he even play Lee Sin? I don't think he played Lee Sin. Because the people are just saying, oh, he's a good jungler, so he plays Lee Sin. Guess he played Lee Sin. He actually plays Lee Sin. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong on the Lee Sin point. My bad. OG also know how to get a lead early game. It's just that their mid game suffers. That's all. And I think that's a hurdle they can overcome. Alfari plays good. I think Nuktak is slightly underrated. Upset is good. Wave management can do work on bottom, and I think Xerxes has had some great performances. I'm not ready to throw Xerxes under any bus just yet. But they won't overcome that. They haven't shown that for 3 years. Dude, this roster has nothing to do with the past rosters. Nothing. Changing one player is enough to change the dynamic. You just don't talk about 3 years. But yeah, maybe it's a coaching issue. Maybe it's just there is no understanding of what needs to be done in mid game. Who knows? I don't think they'll catch up to Fnatic and G2. I don't think so. Upset didn't live up to the hype. I think he's had some good games. No, right now we are doing a tier list, and we already talked about Fnatic. So next team is fourth place for me is Misfits. I think Misfits have shown a lot of good understanding of how to transition their leads. They understand how to snowball their pressure well. I think we got to see some growing pains, honestly. Some growing pains. They don't seem to be using their TPs that well to cover for each other. Like if they get a lead, they look good. But sometimes in that status quo, when things really are very close, and there's like one big play that's going to change everything, they seem to come out a bit short, in contrast to the teams that are above them. You know? In contrast to the teams that are above them, plain and simple. And for the rest, I think they are getting leads. They are definitely getting leads. And in the games that they do, they manage to close well. I think Dan is someone that has gone under the radar because a lot of the times where Misfits gets spoken about, it's all about Fabiven and Razork. I think Dan plays a strong side top lane. But when he plays weak side, it looked quite terrible this last weekend. But most of the time, Misfits play for top side. They play for mid top side. Mid top side, control, look for dice, look for dice, look for dice. But when Dan is on weak side, he ran it down. So we had the game where GP TP'd, and GP TP'd, took a red buff from killing Azir, and there was a buff transfer, I think. And then GP went top and killed Seth, and then, you know, it was rough. So I think Misfits still is a strong team. I don't think Dan is a bad player. I think when he gets to play strong side, it seems to be good, you know? It looks good. If I pay €75 for coaching, do I get a chance to talk to you or just gameplay? You get both. My worry about Misfits is when they need to play into bottom side, they don't seem to do it that well. And I think everyone drank the Misfits bot lane is good Kool-Aid because Caps ran it down. I am not sold by the bot lane of Misfits. And I think if the meta shifts too heavily and they need to play around bottom and they need to play around different specific lanes, I think they might have an issue. Because I think the main thing to address is, can Dan play weak side on something else that's not cheapy? And that's, a very small sample size, but it still matters, right? I don't think Misfits bot lane is particularly good in lane. They seem to be serviceable. They play weak side, they fall behind, and that's okay. And when Misfits get to play their game, they seem to be good. So we'll have to pay attention to it. Can Misfits actually play through bottom? Can they play through top? When they get a lead, they seem to do fine. They transfer pressure well. If Bevan has a lead in mid, he's going to look to dive on sides. And that's great. That's cool. That's the strength of Misfits. They seem to transfer their pressure well. And then their mid to late game. Alright, I think their natural setup needs some work. But I think when it comes to Misfits, they seem to just be making the mistakes of a young team, Some of those early game clutch moments can be better. Some of their Nash setups can be better. And then they need to diversify their playstyle. Because right now, if I'm playing against Misfits, I think they come across as, okay, they're going to play from mid into top most of the time. If we manage this, then all will be good, Jesus, my nose is itching so much. So now, probably the hardest one. Mad Lions Rogue. Well, I'm gonna put Rogue 5th. I think Rogue... Shit. I guess, honestly, top 4 is pretty easy. But let's talk about Rogue. So Rogue, I think, when they play against... So Larson, I'm not sold on Larson at all. Not at all. I think Finn is the best player on Rogue, but he has such a small champion pool. So my issue with Larson is that most games he kind of just exists. And that's fine. But there's been many moments against... like, whenever I see... Like, for example, the games that come to mind. His LeBlanc performance against G2, very bad. His Syndra performance against Fnatic, very, very bad. His LeBlanc performance against OG, very bad. The Echo game, mechanically, disgusting. And I say that with, like, when I say disgusting, I mean bad, not like good. Well, was the Fnatic his fault though? Well, Ornn is TPing top, right? Ornn TP'd on the Zac thing. Why didn't he TP? He also had TP. He only played for lane. Only playing for CS. While the enemy mid laner is taking over the game. It's not the right way to play the game. It's not about Syndra being a good or bad pick, it's just that he did nothing. Against OG, he also TP'd to mid when OG was diving bottom. That's the thing, right? I feel like Larson is just playing for himself and is not playing for the rest of the map. And I think as a mid laner, you can't be that. So even though his stats look good, I think they are deceptive. So, to be fair to Rogue, they lost 2 games to Soraka, right? 2 games to Soraka, maybe they could have ended differently, who knows. They lost 2 games to Soraka. Issue now with Finn is, for example, Finn, to not be playing Gangplank right now is crazy. Like, if you don't play Gangplank in the current meta, I think you are mad. You are a madman. You don't play GP, you play a very bad set. It's crazy to me. When Finn has a good matchup, and he's playing as Aatrox, when he's playing Kled into Aatrox, very cool. Very cool. But his set, lose every game. Ornn, lost with Ornn. Wunder plays GP. Wunder actually plays GP. Like, when I was working with Wunder and we qualified to the World Championship, he played 5 games of GP in one best of 5. Against Vichishashi Shen. So that to me is crazy, right? I think Vander is really good. Vander is really good, I think, for Rogue. And my issue with Rogue is that I feel like they are okay at everything. Just okay at everything. And if they are facing a team that has a sense of strength in a particular avenue, they tend to struggle. It's just rare that you see Rogue doing anything out of the ordinary. And the question is, for me is, you know, like, I'm just not sold on Larson. I'm just not sold on Larson. I think Finn is good. I think Finn is exciting. But I'm worried about his champion pool. That's all. Finn is exciting as a player. I think he understands team fights very well and can find a lot of good opportunities. I feel the same way for Vander. But the feeling I'm getting from Hans Sama and Larson is that they're almost afraid while they're playing. you know? But I think being okay at everything is something that will put you in 5th place. I do like what I see from Vander though. I think he is very, very intelligent and it's good. So 5th place, Rogue. I am not sold on Larson. I think he's not a team player, and I think there's been many games where he's exposed. Don't you think Kaiser's better than Vander? I think Kaiser's really, really good. Kaiser's really good. It's hard to rate supports because longevity is how you rate a support. Yeah, Rogue is just decent everything. Limited 0. Thank you. Lieutenant Limited 0. Thank you so very much. Make some noise. Okay, let's not get stuck on Rogue. Summarize. Not impressed with Larson. I just think Larson and Hans Sama, they don't perform so well in the big games in the league. They don't perform against the better teams, and this is something that I'm worried about. Inspired, I honestly don't know how to feel about Inspired, because after that game against Origin, my opinion of him is just, it's boom. Because the way he played that game was awful. You know, but they can bounce back. Yeah, they can bounce back. They can bounce back. I just don't think they will have any meaningful impact in best of fives. Okay. Let's move on to Mad Lions, which is my 6th place team, but I'm heavily considering Excel. Heavily considering Excel, and let me tell you why. So Excel is 1 game behind. Excel is 1 game behind, and it's weird because Excel and Mad Lions both have a lot of problems. A lot of problems. Mad Lions or Roman is in the conversation for being the worst top laner in the LEC. He's in the conversation of being the worst top laner in the LEC, together with Sacre. Orome is constantly playing weak side, which is, of course, going to make him look a bit worse. But he just kind of gets left to his own devices most of the time. I think he is not so threatening in lane. Played like he just seems to be a Vichichachi that dies less. That's Orome to me. But Vichichachi at least had crazy good team fighting on those tongs. So I think Orome will always be a liability against the teams that are above. Mad Lions won against Rogue playing Soraka. The thing is, Vichichachi had very good team fighting, but Orome team fighting is not looking so great. It's not looking so great. That's the thing. I think mechanically in team fights, Orome is looking not so exciting. Vichichachi had good laning now. It was okay, but he just played bad champs for lane. Like Roma is being put on weak side, and that's why I'm having a bit of a reservation in terms of putting him full on blast. But I think the solo laners of Mad Lions are causing them an issue. Humanoid. So when Humanoid plays Azir, so thing is, Mad Lions, if they have bottom prio, I think Karzi and Kaiser are really good. Very, very strong bot lane. They know how to impact the map. So it's understandable that they are playing for this, right? Mad Lions are playing through bottom. The meta also allows it to play through bottom. So Mad Lions, I think the strength they have above Rogue is that they have a sense of identity. I think Mad Lions can grow to become better than Rogue on paper. Mad Lions with that bottom prio. Like I think Kaiser, Shadow, Karzi, very, very high class players. Humanoid is like a coin flip, and Oroma I'm not convinced with. Humanoid, when he's playing a champion that has dashes, he seems to do great. When he has dashes, he seems to do great. Because he's playing every champion like he has 3 dashes. Sometimes he has games where he just runs it down, dies to every gank, and dies on side. And that's cool. That's but then he has the games on Azir, LeBlanc. When he has dashes, it's cool. When he plays the Zoe, it looks cool. So he's so weird. He's so weird. He's really, really weird. Because he has some crazy games too. Like he carries some games for Mad Lions, but he also solo loses some games. And it's tricky. Because if Humanoid was a bit more patient, it's I don't know. After talking about this, I feel like almost putting Mad Lions over Rogue. I feel like putting Mad Lions over Rogue. I feel like putting Mad Lions over Rogue. Honestly, I want to change it. I want to change it. I think I would want to put Mad Lions over Rogue. I think I'm putting Mad Lions over Rogue. Shit, man. Am I? Like Mad Lions beat Fnatic. Mad Lions beat G2 in good games. In good games. They beat them in good games. And I'm very impressed by Kaiser, Kazi, and Shadow. And I don't feel like Mad Lions feel scared while they're playing. Do you like Humanoid more than Larson? Oh, that's a tough question. Because you have one guy like this, and then you have one guy like this. But then you have games like Mad Lions So, Mad Lions versus XL. Mad Lions versus XL, right? XL kicked their shit in. Right now. This tier list is for right now. Like, how do you rate teams right now? Like, that means everything. Playoffs right now. Like, what is the team? Like, how do we rate the team right now? Because Mad Lions got smashed. They really got smashed. No. I think Rogue 5th, Mad Lions 6th. The way you beat Mad Lions is you pick better bot. If you have better bot lane matchup, I think Mad Lions actually struggles. That's my opinion. Because XL in their game against Mad, they are playing Kalista Taric. They blind pick Kalista Taric into Aphelios, and they just lock in Trash. Aphelios Trash will have Prio into Kalista, and when that doesn't happen, it seems rough. It seems rough. The Mad Lions are very reliant on having better bottom. And then the question is Shadow. Great listen. Everything else? Who knows? If you can play Lee, you can play everything else. It's a false narrative. Yeah. Then for the rest, XL 7th. Like, XL might as well, can also contest for 6th and 5th, like, for sure, with these teams. I think XL trying to figure out their issues. Like, they're trying to figure out their mid to late game, and I think they slowed down their early game as a cost of it. The main thing to highlight here is I think Mad Lions still have the best chances of breaching the teams above them, you know? Like, it's much easier for me to imagine Mad Lions beating a G2 and Fnatic than it is for me to imagine that Rogue beats a G2 or Fnatic. Much easier. Where Mad Lions get on to that point where they have a bottom that pushes and they get to work together, Shadow and Kaiser. They have a very strong jungle support synergy. They control the map. They set up Humanoid for success, and Humanoid can play like an absolute bathing ape. Then he can easily, do some things mechanically, you know? So that's cool. So I think if the team is able to cover for Humanoid's weaknesses, then it looks good. If the draft is able to cover up Humanoid's weaknesses, then it's good. Currently, his Zoe, Azir, LeBlanc look very strong. Keep him away from Mordekaiser and Rise. So it's tough. It's tough to make a tier list, honestly. It's I didn't come into this with anything planned. I think Jizuki is more calculated. For the rest of the teams, Schalke, Nulfir, 8th place. I think Vitality, 9th place, and then 10th place, SK. I don't think we need to go into these teams. It's not so interesting. But I think top 4 is pretty set in stone. Maybe Rogue can breach it with Misfits dropping. But yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. I said I was gonna take calls, but we've already been doing this episode for 2 hours. So I think it's a good time to stop. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next YamatoCannon experience. Now we will head into reviewing games on the stream.